It's been said that every quilt tells a story, and it's so true. But I also believe every quilter has a story to tell. I wanted to hear about the people behind these wonderful quilts and thought you'd enjoy hearing about their lives also. Welcome to A Quilter's Life. Christine Lindebak is forever grateful to her parents for supporting her on her sewing journey from such a young age to where she is now. Can you imagine being so young when you began to sew that you can't even imagine not being able to do so? Sewing runs through the fiber of who Christine is, and it's exciting to hear how it has shaped her life. Christine, I am so happy that you're joining us on A Quilter's Life.
Thank you so much, Paula. I'm so excited to be here today and to get to chat with you.
Please tell us how you found out about A Quilter's Life.
Well, probably a very simple way is that I was just doing a Google search of sewing related podcasts. So, very basic. I think I tend to kind of operate in a little bit of a silo over here. So, that's how I found you.
Great. Google search is good. I'm surprised you found me. I don't always show up for myself.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's been a couple of months. So, yeah, maybe my search was a little deeper down or something. Yeah.
Well, let's jump back into your life. Share where you were born and raised.
Yeah. So I was actually born in the Pacific Northwest, just outside of Seattle in a small town called Enumclaw. So lots of farms. I lived far away. We were kind of right between Auburn and Enumclaw. So a lot of my friends were in Auburn and we were kind of in the country. So there wasn't a lot to do. And so that's kind of where sewing came into play because it kept me busy.
Do you have one of those special childhood memories to share?
It's a memory clear as day. And my dad was more of a night owl. And so he would go to bed around like 11 or something like that, like late, quote unquote. And it was during the summer. And I must have been about maybe 8 or 9 years old. And I was sewing. And I was so engaged in whatever it was I was making. I'm sure it was either a Barbie or a Cabbage Patch doll outfit that was very important. And I was so engaged in sewing it that when he was going to bed, he came into wherever the sewing room and was like, "Are you still up?" Like he was really surprised. There I was still toiling away at sewing. And I'll never forget it because I look back on it now and it's like, wow, I was really enjoyed what I was doing so much that I couldn't even go to bed yet.
Needed to finish that project.
Needed to finish it. Yeah.
Now, other than sewing, have you had other employment?
My first employment was kind of a shadow from sewing, like a shadow career. So I sewed all my teenage, and then so when it came time to get a job, I understood clothing construction and how things were made. And I loved fashion. I loved the process of clothing and sewing. But at that time, it was pre-internet. So there weren't a lot of opportunities where I was to make a career with sewing. And so where I kind of found myself was working in retail. So growing up in the Pacific Northwest, Nordstrom was in our backyard basically. And so one day I just marched into the Nordstrom and I got a job. And that was kind of the start of a whole 15-year career working in luxury retail. And I just moved up the ranks. I moved from Seattle to Los Angeles and then to New York, working in luxury fashion my whole career. So while it is kind of related to sewing, I wasn't directly sewing like I am now.
It's just so amazing how what we learn when we're young and what we're pulled towards shows up in our adult lives.
Yeah. And I think sometimes I'll talk to people and we'll be talking about what did you used to love to do when you were a kid? Like, that kid that was staying up till 11 o'clock sewing, it's like, what did you love to do before making money became something you needed to do? And I feel like that's really where our true passion, our gifts, there's clues there. Like if someone is kind of like in a transition moment of their life or moving into a different decade or something, going back to that, like, what did I love to do when I was little? There's a lot of gems in that.
It's so amazing. I remember after my kids grew up, looking back at their pictures and thinking, well, no wonder they're doing that now. Look at what they were doing then. So, yeah,
Oh, I bet that's so fun to look back and see that in your children. I think that must be really, really cool.
it is. So, you grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and where are you now?
So now I'm way far away in Valencia, Spain. So I moved to Spain about 8 years ago after being completely burnt out of the fashion industry. I had lived in New York for 7 years and I was working, and I had moved up the corporate ladder and was working as a director of retail for an Italian fashion brand and managing 5 stores in the US, lots of stress. Just New York on its own, living there is, it's pretty stressful. It's a pretty intense place. And I was just super burned out. I always knew that I wanted to live in Europe at some point. I always thought I would end up in Italy, but I kind of veered a little bit and ended up in Spain.
When the email came through and I saw that your time zone was in a European time zone, I was like, I thought she was in New York.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know New York is still very much a big part of my heart, and I feel like it'll always be a little bit of home there. But yeah, different time zone now.
Yeah. Christine, is there anything else about your family that you would like to share?
One of the things about my younger years was really my mom. My mom is a quilter still. So I think the model of her sewing and quilting, and she would watch like Nancy Zeman and another gal that I can't remember, the one who would throw her scraps over her shoulder. I can't remember her name.
I know who you mean, and I can picture her. And
I can picture her. She was always so happy and so smiley. Like those things really had an impact on me. And of course, having a sewing machine in the living room also allowed me to get into sewing in the first place. And my mom and I would go to Sew Expo together, which is in Puyallup, so really close by there. So yeah, I think my mom was a big part of my sewing journey and still is today.
have fun. What a great hobby, in a way, hobby. Now it's your work. But to be able to share that with your mom, she understands more what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's fun to, she'll find some vintage linens with embroideries, or she'll be quilting something. And so it's really fun to share with her.
So neat. Well, when you think of generations to come, how do you think you will be described by them?
It's such a hard question to answer because there's like a humility aspect of it. It's like, well, I don't think anyone will remember. But I think what I really enjoy doing is inspiring people to pick up sewing and experiment and not be too hard on yourself when you make a mistake. So just really creating or kind of modeling that sewing is a great place to be and it's a great skill to have. And there's so many more benefits beyond just making something, making a quilt or making a garment. So hopefully people would remember me as like an inspiration.
I think that also answered the next question of what you would want to tell them.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking the other day about there's this technique that I teach in my serger classes. So I teach at Sew Expo now, and I teach a class called Make a T-shirt using only your serger. And so one of the techniques is instead of veering off, when you come to the end of when you're serging something around, instead of just kind of doing the veer off where you just like serge kind of off to the left, you get like a little half circle of the tail and it kind of looks odd. Instead, what you want to do is just you surge up until your last surging, and then you lift your presser foot and turn your project perpendicular and then surge off that way. And it gives you this really clean finish. You avoid kind of that veer off thing. And I was thinking yesterday as I was doing the technique, people will tell me, I think of you every time I do that technique. It's like fun to think about the people that I can give like little nuggets of technique that someone hasn't thought of and that they can connect it back to me in a positive way. I think is just like warms my heart. I think it's so, so cool.
That is. I think in our own lives, we do certain things and think of people that helped us learn those things.
Yeah, you kind of connect it back to them and it's cool. I guess it kind of helps us feel connected in the sewing world.
Sure does. Are there other crafts that you do besides sewing?
Yeah, well, I do love quilting. I mean, it's under the sewing umbrella, but usually I'll quilt when I go home because my mom has a long arm. She's got all the tools and gadgets and the setup for really quilting the right way. And so I've made quite a few quilts with her. I've tried crochet and I absolutely cannot figure it out. I just can't. It's so funny because I see people doing it on YouTube and Instagram, and I have this kind of romantic idea of, oh, I could crochet a fun top or something, and I just can't get it. And so I've pretty much given up on that one. So, yeah, I think other than that, I do love plants and doing a little bit of gardening, albeit in containers at this point. But I love gardening.
Do you think any of your crafts or hobbies show up in your sewing?
So, well, that I guess then I would say a different hobby, and that would be fashion magazines. I don't know if that's considered a hobby, but I'm still really old school in that I love going to the newsstand, finding and buying a magazine or two. And what I'll do is I'll rip out the pages that have something that I like. So I guess you could kind of say it could be on the border of collage or scrapbooking. But I love tearing out the pages, and that definitely influences my sewing. I look for color combinations, different techniques that I see in something that then I'll, make my own version of it, just in general styles or styling. But a lot of it is like color combinations that I'm always looking for.
I'm going to push a little farther here. Now, when you go back and quilt with your mom and you're making a quilt, do these hobbies show up in your quilts?
I think they definitely do. Color combinations, the pattern I choose as well, the quilting pattern. I've done a couple that are like my mom would consider more modern than she would make. That's always kind of interesting, but then I'll go and do something really classic. Like I really want to make an Irish chain, the double Irish chain. But I think more like my hobby influences the patterns I choose and the color combinations, kind of that more modern.
And I think I know your answer to this one. Who introduced you to sewing?
Oh, yeah. Well, that would be my mom. But I will say, Nancy Zeman, I would consider her kind of my official teacher through PBS. I met her a couple times at Sew Expo as well, and it really like stayed with me. So yeah. And also as I got more into sewing, my mom would find people who had expertise in areas that she didn't have. So I learned tailoring from a woman named Sheila who just understood tailoring. And so I would go to her house during the summer a couple days and work with her. Yeah, Martha Pullen. I went to one of her week-long things in Alabama to learn. But definitely my mom was the one who introduced me.
I'm just imagining how excited she was when she set you down at her sewing machine.
Yeah, or fear, because I was pretty little. So I was around 5 years old. And she said that she was afraid that I would get my fingers caught in the machine. But I think I became so annoying that she was finally like, okay, just do it, just sew. Watch your fingers.
Oh, I
So
can picture that.
yeah.
What was your worst sewing experience?
Oh, goodness. My worst sewing experience, or maybe we could even say my worst project. I think it was overall a good sewing experience, but I think normally I do have good sewing experiences, but an outfit that comes to mind that I made, I think I must have been about 14. So, really in that really awkward stage where I had the braces and the frizzy hair and the glasses. And I made this two-piece outfit that was like a princess seamed fit and flare dress with a bolero jacket that I had done some, not embroidery, but I think I used like a certain trim and did kind of a curly Q around the edges of the jacket. I think I was really proud of it at the moment. But when I look back at photos, it just was like the worst ever. The color, and I mean, it fit well, but just a really awkward moment in my life, I think.
It's funny of our perspective from when we're actually doing it to when we look back on it.
Yeah, in the moment, I think I thought it was really, really cool and fashionable. But yeah.
What has drawn you to sewing instead of anything else you could be doing?
I think part of it is just that it's something that I've always done. I don't even remember learning to sew. That's how young I was. And so I think that sewing has just always been something that I do. And even when I was working in corporate environments, I always had a little space with my sewing machine. And so I was always making clothes, usually clothes to wear to work, is kind of what I was doing. So, as unexciting as it is, I think it's just because I've kind of always done it. I think it's as natural to me as like my right arm, it's just like always there. But I do find that sewing for me now, even though I do it more, I guess I would say as a job in a more of a full-time basis, I still find that if I have a problem that I'm trying to sort out, I know that I can sew for a couple hours. And by the end of that couple hours, I'll have the problem sorted out, or at least like really, really far on its way to being solved. And so there is some conscious thought into that of like, okay, I just need to sew for a couple hours.
And you can't even imagine not being able to do that.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. It's so funny. I've never really thought about it, but it's something, yeah, that is really just part of what I do.
Was your tip the tip about serging, or do you have another sewing tip to
Oh,
share?
sure. One of the things that I've been kind of working on lately is taking the pressure off of myself. Because I think sometimes, even with social media, groups, online, I think really online, there's a little bit of this subtle pressure to finish things in a certain amount of time that maybe isn't realistic for us. Like maybe someone else's version of making a quilt in a week is totally unrealistic for someone else. And maybe making a quilt in a year is not comfortable for someone else that could do it in a month. We all have our own timelines. For me, I'm just trying to give myself the grace of like, you can take as long as you need to finish this thing that you're working on. There's no rush. And so I think that's kind of, I guess I'm probably giving myself my own advice because it's something I'm trying to be more conscious of and just not have any time pressure at all when I'm sewing.
We're not in school anymore.
Yeah, exactly. There's no deadline unless, it's for a gift. That's a different story. But when it's just for enjoyment, there's no timeline.
Right. I love that tip. We all need it. So describe your journey from having sewing as a hobby and it became your business?
Well, like I shared, I was working in fashion and always sewing in the background. And I think my work in fashion, working around new clothes all the time, there was no shortage of like inspiration. And so in 2015, I started a blog. Like blogging was kind of the thing. So I was living in New York and I was sewing things on the side. So I started a blog called Sewing in the City. It was just my place to share stuff that I was making. I didn't really take it too seriously. It was just kind of fun to share. And then when I made the decision to leave my corporate career, I needed something else to do. And I needed a way to make money, essentially. I knew that, I couldn't just leave my job without having something else to pay the rent, essentially. So what I ended up doing was before I quit, I started studying WordPress because I was already blogging. So I kind of understood the online world a little bit, but I studied more officially. And then when I finally left my job, I started building websites. And that was what I was doing for quite a while. I was doing it remotely because you can do it from anywhere. So it was great. And then I started working with people that were entrepreneurs and people that were kind of doing their own thing. And one day, it was literally like a strike of lightning, like a lightning strike for me, just in the clarity that came to the idea of why am I not doing this for myself? I was spending all this energy and time, and it was great. I enjoyed it, and I was able to help people and be a value. But at some point, I was like seeing all these other people building their dream. And I was like, why am I not doing this for myself? But what had happened is I learned the online world. I learned how you create a digital product and how you sell it online and how to build all of that infrastructure. And so then in 2019 is when I actually launched Sewing in the City officially. And the first product I created was a Learn to Sew course. And I still have it today. It's called Stitch Playbook. And it starts at the very basic how to sew, how to pick your fabric, and all the basics. And with that came a sweatshirt pattern. Because when you think of learning to sew, a lot of people will make like an apron or pants or pajama pants or something. So I wanted to do something a little different. So I designed a really just basic sweatshirt pattern. And that's when I was like, oh, making patterns is really fun. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. And yeah, that was the path. It was really thanks to understanding tech that I was able to get into doing sewing for a living.
No wonder your website looks so wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I guess that could be another hobby I would consider too, is like I like building stuff online. For me, it's really fun.
It just ties in so well, and it's great to have a wonderful website. So you mentioned the name of your business is Sewing and the City, and you use that as your blog. So how did you come up with that name?
Well, actually, it was before 2015, like 2014, 13 time. And I was living in New York, working in fashion. I think I was aspiring to be like Carrie Bradshaw with the show Sex and the City. I think there was something about her fashion and all of that that was inspiring to me. And so it came from there. It was sewing and the city, it was living in the city. And the city has always been kind of part of the brand as well. Even though now I'm in Spain, I still like to incorporate the city, take pictures on the street. So the city is kind of a backdrop to the brand in some ways. And yeah, so that's how it came about.
I think that's what pops in our mind, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Oh yeah.
So I love what you've done with the quilts in your patterns. Share about the patterns you use quilts in.
Yeah, I've done it a lot. I think obviously my quilting experience with my mom and love of quilting comes through. So last winter, I designed a new coat pattern called the Crosby. It's a coat, it's asymmetrical. So one side has an attached scarf that you kind of throw over your shoulder. And so for one of my samples, I used, like, I would say it would be a cutter quilt. It was a vintage quilt that had quite a few stains and was a little bit worn in some areas. And so I used that to make the coat. And I was able to work around some of the stains and holes. Some of them I was able to hide in places less noticeable. But that one, it's so cozy because it's a really well worn in vintage quilt that someone made and stitched and put all the colors together. I think it's a 9, yeah, it's a 9 patch with different kind of happy colors, I would say. So I used that. And then I've done a quilted coat that I made from scratch. So I took the pattern and decided, okay, I need to make a quilt this big for the front, one for the back, the sleeves. Then I actually cut it up and made it into a jacket using my Great Jones jacket pattern. I did that. And then I've also done where I've sewed a quilt top just big enough to fit 2 sleeves. And then I cut out the sleeve pattern, a puffed sleeve of a shirt, and I did like a solid color on the body of the shirt, and then did the sleeves, puffy sleeves with the quilt top. And it's so cute. It turned out really, really cute. So yeah, I think I'm always kind of thinking about different ways to incorporate quilting because it makes things so unique.
I've kept pulling quilting out of your business, but go ahead and share what your business is so we understand a little bit more of that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Sewing in the City, I create and sell fashion sewing patterns. So jackets, like we spoke about, I have dresses, tops, pants, lots of different PDF patterns. I also have printed patterns that sell in stores all around the world. It sounds funny to say that, but they're sold in sewing stores. And then I also have courses. So, like my Learn to Sew course, I have a new course that I've created called Fit Clinic, where I help people take commercial sewing patterns and figure out what pattern adjustments you can do to get that garment to fit your body. Because we all have different shapes, and it's crazy that sewing pattern that's made for one body type should fit us all. It just doesn't work that way. And so that one's really fun because there's a live element to it. So we meet on Zoom. People make a toile, make a sample, and then we can meet on Zoom and I can help diagnose what's going on with the fit. So yeah, so it's basically patterns and courses. I have a YouTube channel as well. I love doing content also on Instagram. So yeah, that's kind of Sewing in the City in a nutshell.
Thank you. So, making these patterns, and once you got out on your own, do you remember how exciting it was when you sold that first pattern?
I do. I do. Yeah. And how scary as well. There's something really scary about selling something on the internet. I think there's something kind of scary, exciting. But yeah, I totally remember the first time getting that notification that someone had purchased. It's pretty amazing.
And you also mentioned that your patterns are in sewing shops. Under what label?
So under Sewing in the City, so the same label, they're physical patterns. So they're already printed, whereas the PDF patterns, you have to print either at home or at like a Staples or Office Depot. But the printed patterns I sell in stores come already printed with a printed instruction book and everything inside the envelope. But yeah, they're all under the Sewing in the City brand.
Great. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think if you've ever given up sewing your own clothes because things don't fit or your body changed or something like that, sometimes I hear that people have migrated over to quilting because the garment sewing, they just couldn't get things to fit. That you can make clothes and it's really fun. And it's really actually very mathematically precise of how to get a pattern to fit your body. So for anyone who's discouraged with garment sewing, definitely don't feel discouraged. Don't give up. And I have a lot of resources on my YouTube as well. So yeah.
And I take it that if we want to look for you, we just look for Sewing in the City in all the areas you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, YouTube and Instagram. I do have a free pattern as well. When you sign up for my newsletter, I do like a weekly newsletter. So that's all on my Instagram and YouTube as well.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paula. Thanks for having me.
Uh-huh. Bye-bye.
Bye, Paula.
You can find more stories on aquilterslife.com or subscribe on your favorite podcast player so each episode will be downloaded automatically. Also, I want to hear about you and your wonderful quilts. Please contact me, Paula Chamberlain, through the website to set up an interview. And as always, thanks for listening.